They thought she was weak, just a quiet farmer's wife who didn't belong. They mocked her accent, ridiculed her clothes, and laughed at the way she lived. But the humiliation didn't end there. One evening, their cruelty went too far, leaving her stranded and powerless. What they didn't know was that she wasn't as alone as they believed. With one desperate call, everything changed. Because the man who answered wasn't just her husband. He was someone trained to end threats before they even began. And when he arrived, the bullies learned a lesson they would never forget. She had always been different. Born in a small farming community overseas, she moved to the US after marrying her husband, a man who had grown up in the same rural county, but left to serve his country. Life on the farm was hard work, but she embraced it. Waking at dawn to feed chickens, tending to the crops, and baking bread from scratch. To her, it was peaceful. But to some of the locals, her accent and her way of dressing made her a target. She wore long floral skirts, kept her hair tied neatly, and often carried herself with quiet humility. Instead of seeing her kindness, some neighbors saw her as an outsider. At community gatherings, whispers followed her. Kids giggled when she spoke, and a group of women, led by a neighbor who seemed to thrive on cruelty, took every opportunity to humiliate her. They ridiculed her recipes, mocked her when she brought handmade gifts, and even accused her of being backwards. Her husband, often away on deployments, urged her to stay strong. But when he wasn't there, she faced the stares and the laughter alone. What hurt most wasn't the words. It was the way they treated her humanity, as if it didn't matter. She was more than a farmer's wife, more than an immigrant, more than someone different. Yet every day, they worked to make her believe she was less. And then came the night that would change everything. It began at a town event, a harvest festival that should have been filled with warmth and laughter. She arrived quietly, carrying a basket of fresh bread she had baked that morning. She smiled shyly at the group, hoping maybe this time things would be different, but it wasn't. The women cornered her, pretending to compliment her bread before tossing it on the ground, laughing as it crumbled in the dirt. "We don't eat foreign food here," one sneered. Her face burned with shame as the crowd around them chuckled. She tried to hold back tears, whispering a prayer under her breath, but the torment didn't stop there. Later that evening, as the festival ended, she began the long walk back to the farm. That's when the same group caught up with her. Fueled by arrogance and the belief that no one would stand up to them, they surrounded her on the edge of the woods. They mocked her again, telling her she didn't belong in their town, calling her slurs that cut deeper than any knife. Then, in a moment of cruelty that went too far, they tied her to a tree with rough rope, laughing as she struggled. Her hands trembled, her breath came in short gasps. The humiliation was unbearable, but worse was the fear that no one would find her before dawn. For the first time, she felt utterly powerless. But she remembered something her husband once told her. "No matter where I am, call me. I'll always come." With shaking hands, she managed to reach into her pocket, pulling out her phone. The bullies didn't notice as she hit the one number she trusted most. On the other end of the line, miles away, her husband answered. His calm voice steadied her. Within moments, he was on his way. What the bullies didn't know was that he wasn't just a farmer. He was a veteran, a man who had spent years in the most elite units of the military. And when he arrived, their games would end. The sound of a truck engine broke the night's silence. Headlights cut through the darkness, sweeping over the woods. The bullies, still laughing, froze when the vehicle stopped and a man stepped out. He wasn't just any man. He carried himself with the calm, commanding presence of someone who had faced danger far greater than a few petty tormentors. His gaze locked on the group, and in that instant, their confidence crumbled. He didn't shout. He didn't rage. He simply walked forward with measured steps, his boots crunching against the gravel, every movement radiating authority. The bullies shifted uneasily, realizing they had crossed a line they couldn't retreat from. Within seconds, he reached the tree where his wife was tied. He cut her free with one swift motion, helping her to stand. She clung to him, tears streaming down her face, but in his arms, she felt safe again. Then he turned to the bullies. His words were few, but his tone carried a weight they would never forget. He reminded them that cruelty has consequences, that mocking and humiliating someone because of their differences is cowardice, not strength. The silence that followed was heavier than any shouted threat. They backed away, their arrogance shattered. For the first time, they saw themselves for what they truly were. Small, pitiful, and powerless in the face of real courage. The next day, word spread through the town. People whispered about the night the bullies were confronted, about how the farmer's wife had endured humiliation but never broke. and how her husband's quiet strength reminded everyone of what true protection looks like. The bullies avoided her after that, their sneers replaced by silence. Though they never apologized, their dominance was gone. The community began to see her differently. Slowly, neighbors started approaching her, tasting her bread, listening to her stories, and realizing that the very differences they once mocked were the things that made her special. Her husband returned to his work on the farm, never boasting about what he had done. For him, it wasn't about pride. It was about love, loyalty, and standing up for what's right. She continued her life as she always had, tending the fields, baking bread, living with quiet dignity. But within her was a new strength. She had faced the worst of cruelty and survived. She knew now that she was never truly powerless, not with resilience in her heart and love by her side. And as for the town, the memory lingered. It became a silent reminder that cruelty thrives in shadows, but withers in the presence of courage. So ask yourself, in a world where differences are too often mocked, would you be the one to stay silent, or the one to stand up? Because sometimes, all it takes is one act of courage to change everything.